Welcome to the Law Lounge. This is the Traveller's Guide to the Forgotten Realms. Episode 9. Wave Echo Cave, Part 2. My dear Lord Sandrier, I write this with a heavy heart. After 3 tendays in the company of the brothers Rockseeker, I've taken my leave of them at last. You will forgive me, I hope, if this letter is more introspective than usual. When one departs good friends and such a place of consequence, it is natural to look inward, as well as without. You will remember my earlier descriptions of Wave Echo Cave, that lost dwarven and gnomish complex hidden in the roots of the Sword Mountains. Once it was the beating heart of an agreement called the Fandelver Pact, an alliance between dwarves, gnomes and men. The purpose of the pact was simple enough to state, but difficult to achieve, sharing the riches of the earth and the fruits of magic fairly amongst all peoples who had entered into it, those of Gnomengard, Wave Echo Cave and Phandalin. It worked for a time. They discovered rich veins of ore, both mundane and magical, and with them founded a great forge, the Forge of Spells, where enchanters and smiths together created wonders of war and craft. Then came orcs, wizards, greed, and the usual litany of disaster. The pact fell, the cave was lost, and its location became a rumour told for coin in taverns from Neverwinter to Baldur's Gate, until Gundren Rockseeker, adventurer, antiquarian, and seeker found it again. This letter truly begins 3 days ago, when Gundren, Tharden and Nundro and I were making our final preparations inside the newly reclaimed entrance chambers. We'd cleared out the worst of the dangers, driven off or slain the cave's most recent squatters, and secured the approach. The deeper halls and the forge itself we agreed to leave for later, wiser minds, more hands and perhaps a few battalions of guards. At first light, Tharden sat himself upon a sturdy crate, produced a small piece of carved stone and began sending what he called missives. In truth, castings of the spell sending, magical messages carried in thought. With them, he reached out to trusted kin, to certain clerics of Dumathoin and Moradin, and to 1 or 2 legally minded friends in Neverwinter. You see, the Rockseeker clan means to establish a formal claim upon Wave Echo Cave. In the north, such matters still carry weight, particularly within the Lord's Alliance, that loose confederation of powerful cities, like Waterdeep, Neverwinter and Silverymoon. The Alliance has no emperor, but its members prefer a stable, prosperous frontier, and so they take a keen interest in mines, trade routes, and anyone who can work them. Tharden's messages were, in essence, the opening moves in a game played in ink and seal rather than sword and spell. Once the right folk know it's ours, Gundren said, it'll take a dragon or worse to pry it away. As he and Nundro explained this, we ferried tools and supplies down into the first wide caverns. A few lingering sturges, flying parasites the size of a man's forearm, and about as charming as you might imagine, tried their luck and met swift ends. The echo of our boots, the clink of iron, the muttered dwarven curses. These, more than any inscription, marked the mine as living again. We'd promised one another we would not push deeper that day. Our task was to make safe what we had already won, not to gamble further for glory. So we set about clearing rubble, shoring up timbers, and making space for future camps. It was while moving a long-fallen support that I uncovered a body. The corpse was ancient, little more than bone and leather, dried and preserved by the still, stale air. As I shifted it gently, the belt around its withered waist snapped. A sword, still sheathed in a rotted scabbard, slid free and dropped at my feet. The scabbard, the remains of the scabbard, flaked away at my touch. The blade did not. It lay there in the half-light, gleaming faintly beneath dust and grime, but unpitted and unbent. Whatever craft had gone into its making, time had failed to mar it. I stooped to pick it up, feeling that slight, unmistakable tingle that any priest or wizard knows as the breath of magic. Nundro caught sight of it and grinned. "Looks like something wants your attention, Falrien," he said. Later, as we paused for a quick meal, I set about cleaning the sword properly. It was not dwarven work, that much was clear at once. Too light in the hand, the lines too flowing. It had been forged by a human or an elf, the guard and grip shaped accordingly. Yet the balance was excellent, the steel singing softly when, finally clean, I held it at arm's length. As I polished away the stubborn last of the rust-like film, some trick of the cave air, I think, rather than true corrosion, a mark emerged on the blade, 3 interlocking rings encircled by the stylized outline of a mountain. I'd seen that symbol often enough. I knew it from old tapestries and newer cavern murals. It was the crest of the Fandelver Pact itself. Tharden leaned over my shoulder, took the sword and turned it in the light. "I'd say you meant to have that, my friend," he said, his thumb brushing the 3 rings, dwarves, gnomes, and men bound in agreement. I must have frowned, because he chuckled and passed the blade to Gundren. Gundren studied it carefully, then looked up at me. He didn't speak. Instead he tapped the amulet he wears on his chest, the symbol of Dumathone, the dwarf god of secrets and buried wealth. Now, my Lord Sandrier, you know me well enough to guess my reaction. I was raised in the service of Suni Firehair, goddess of beauty and passion. My earliest lessons were of art, love, the ways in which beauty can heal and inspire. We do not easily dismiss omens. Suni is as capable of sending a sign as any deity, but we are taught to be wary of reading our every whim in spilled wine and candle smoke. Yet, when I took the sword back into my hand, it felt right, as though my fingers already knew the shape of its grip. Whether that was fate, providence, or merely the flattery of a well-balanced blade, I cannot say. But I choose, and I believe that is important. I chose to accept it as a gift. There is a quiet teaching in Suni's faith that I've always cherished, that the gods may offer, but mortals must accept. Love not chosen is no love at all. Perhaps the same can be said of destiny. As the day wore on, the sky outside darkened. A storm swept down from the north, its arrival heralded by a low, constant rumble that vibrated through the stone. By the time we made ready to depart, the rain was already coming in horizontal sheets, the wind strong enough to knock a man from the narrow path. Reluctantly, we agreed to stay one more night within the relative shelter of the cave mouth. The brothers grumbled at the delay. Dwarves are not impatient by nature, but Gundren burns with a bright, almost reckless zeal when business is at hand. Still, there was little else to be done. We rebuilt our camp amongst the crates and bedrolls, lit our lanterns, and watched the lightning dance across the distant peaks. That night, the conversation turns, as it often does among those who dig for a living, to gods and obligations. Gundren spoke of Dumathone at greater length. The Silent Keeper, he says, does not shout about his will like Tempest upon a battlefield, nor court worshippers with grand visions like Lathander at dawn. Dumathone hides his gifts in the deep places, in veins of ore, pockets of gemstones, forgotten caverns rich with promise. Finding them is the work of lifetimes, and each discovery is a kind of unspoken conversation between the god and miner. To waste a vein, Tharden added, or to strip the earth without care, is to break that trust. It reminded me, oddly, of some of Suni's more contemplative teachings. We speak often of beauty and love, yes, but also of stewardship, the care of that which is most precious. A garden, a painting, a relationship, a friendship, all require tending. Neglect can be as great a sin as malice. We talk too of the Lord's alliance. The alliance is not, as some peasants think, a single kingdom, but an association of city-states and powerful realms who agree, most of the time, to work together for mutual security and profit. They share information, sometimes troops, and often policies. In practice, this means that a rediscovered mine like Wave Echo Cave will very quickly become the subject of intense interest in council chambers from Baldur's Gate to Silverymoon. Such places attract not only wealth but trouble, monsters, ambitious wizards, and foreign powers who would like a piece of the pie. By securing formal recognition from the Alliance, the Rockseekers hope to anchor their claim within that web of shared interest. If everybody benefits from us holding it, Gundren said, then no one benefits from taking it away. It's very practical thinking, that of commerce and politics, but no less powerful for it. Walkeen's priest would approve and nod, I think. When dawn finally came, the storm had passed. The air in the cave mouth felt refreshingly washed, cold and clean. Outside, the peaks shone under scattered clouds, their snowcaps blazing in Lathander's early light. The brothers were already busy, as dwarves tend to be. Nundro approached, carrying a strip of leather and something folded over his arm. He handed it to me. Couldn't have you wandering round with a beautiful old sword like that jammed through your belt. You'd have your leg off before you got to the next inn, he said, laughing. It was a brand new belt and scabbard, freshly cut and stitched, designed to fit the blade snugly. I thanked him more than once, letting him adjust it to fit properly upon my hip. Once there it felt inevitable, as though the sword had always hung by my side. Gundren came over, eyed my new accoutrement, and slapped me on the back. Looks good, he said. Welcome to the clan. We broke our fast together, in a mixture of laughter and silence, the former to keep our spirits up, the latter because each of us knew what was coming. Partings are easier with a full belly than an empty one, but no less real. Less than an hour later, my pack was shouldered, my cloak fastened, and the donkey, poor patient creature, once more loaded with supplies. We five walked together as far as the fork in the track where our paths diverged. There, with the wind tugging at cloaks and hair, we spoke our farewells. Tharden and Nundro swore oaths of friendship to me in Dethic, the angular dwarven script spoken aloud as solemn, resonant syllables, and then again in Trondathan, the common tongue of much of the Heartlands. I returned the oaths as best I could. My Dethic accent always makes them laugh, but I choose to believe that Moradin Allfather was pleased rather than offended. After a final embrace all around, the pair turned back to Wave Echo Cave and their future labours. I stood a moment longer, watching until the curve of the path took them out of sight. Then I turned my face toward the open country and began to descend. Our pace that day was steady and unhurried. As I dropped from the high, broken stone of the mountains into the gentler slopes of the foothills, thin threads of smoke marked small farms or charcoal burners' camps in the distance. The sun shone bright and strong, a touch of a Murator's favour perhaps, although I suspect the weather owes more to winds and currents than gods in most cases. Still, one can appreciate a clear sky without dissecting it. To the east, the highest peaks remained snow-capped despite the season, their white crowns gleaming. As we paused to water the donkey at a narrow stream, I found my gaze drawn back to them again and again. Gundren, who had walked with me to this point, noticed. "I spy a peak," he said, following my eyes. "Sorry we weren't able to take you there, my friend." I told him not to apologise. There are always more mountains, and the world is too wide to see it all in one life. Besides, I've never believed that destiny is tied to a single summit. Soon he teaches us to seek beauty wherever it be found, not only in the highest or grandest of places. Still he looked grieved, as if he feared he had failed me somehow. I suspect in time the Rockseeker's paths and mine will cross again, perhaps closer to that peak. The realms have a habit of circling back on themselves in unexpected ways. Not long after, we came upon a fork in the road where a 3-wagon caravan had drawn up to rest. They were a mixed group, humans, halflings, and one striking woman with ice-pale skin and ever-moving hair, whom I later learned was an air genasi named Nalis. Their wagons bore trade goods, tools, and the slightly battered look of those who've travelled long and far. They hailed us warmly, and I joined them for a meal, but that, my Lord Sandrier, is the beginning of another letter. For now, I sit by their fire, Wave Echo Cave somewhere behind me, and Crypt Garden's dark trees near to the south, and the new weight of a pact-marked sword on my hip. I feel in a way much like a coin newly struck, my value yet to be tested on the road. Until I write again, I remain your devoted correspondent, Falrien Sunison.